Today, we're diving into a really fascinating legal idea. It's something that acts like the conscience of a nation's laws: constitutional morality. So let me just start by asking you this. What happens when a law is perfectly legal? It's on the books, everything's by the book, but it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel just. That's a huge dilemma, right? And, the answer often isn't found in the black and white text of a law book. Instead, you have to look deeper to something more like the spirit or maybe even the conscience of the Constitution itself.
Okay, so where did this powerful idea even come from? Well, to understand that, we've got to go back a bit.
Believe it or not, the term itself was actually coined way, way back in the 1800s by a British historian you've probably never heard of, a guy named George Grote. And what's really interesting is that right from the get-go, people saw this idea in two different ways. On one hand, you had George Grote. He was focused on us, the citizens. For him, constitutional morality was all about that delicate balance between our personal freedoms and our duty to respect the Constitution. But then you had the famous philosopher John Stuart Mill. He was looking at it from the other side. He was focused on the government. For him, it was about those unwritten rules, those moral duties that stop people in power from going too far. Now, let's fast forward a bit and see how this European idea was picked up, transformed, and given this incredibly powerful new meaning in India, all thanks to one of the nation's key architects. This is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the chairman of India's Constitutional Drafting Committee, and he came up with this amazing metaphor. He said, a constitution's text is just a skeleton. And then he said, the flesh of that skeleton is to be found in what we call constitutional morality. What a line. And that really gets to the heart of what Ambedkar believed. You see, for him, you could write the most perfect constitution in the world, but if the people and the government don't actually live by its core values, well, then it's not worth the paper it's printed on. Democracy wasn't just a document, it was something you had to practice every single day. And that brings us to today, where this whole philosophy has really evolved into this powerful tool for judges, a way to find justice that goes way beyond the literal words written in the law. So, how exactly is constitutional morality used today? Well, in India, it's become a major doctrine for the Supreme Court. It basically gives judges the power to test laws, not just against the words of the Constitution, but against its fundamental values. Those big, beautiful ideas like justice, liberty, and equality that are the real soul of the document. And this sets up a huge clash. On one side, you have constitutional morality, which is all about these timeless, foundational principles. But on the other side, you've got popular morality. That's just what the majority of people happen to think is right or wrong at any given moment. And as we're about to see, those two can be in a head-on collision. All right, enough theory. Let's see how this actually plays out in the real world. We're going to look at a couple of landmark cases from India's Supreme Court. First up, we've got the historic fight to decriminalize homosexuality in India, which all came down to a case called Navtej Singh Johar versus the Union of India. So the problem was a law called Section 377. It was an old colonial-era law that made consensual same-sex relationships a crime. So what tool did the Supreme Court use to challenge it? You guessed it, constitutional morality. And the ruling was a huge deal. The court basically said that popular morality, or what society disapproves of, can't just override the Constitution's promise of equality and dignity. And the outcome was a massive step towards what we call substantive equality for LGBTQ+ citizens. All right, next up, another battle against an old Victorian law. This one was about adultery in a case called Joseph Shine versus the Union of India. Now, the problem with this law was just, wow. Section 497 said that a man could be punished for having an affair with a married woman, but the woman herself couldn't be punished. And why? Because the law literally saw her as the property of her husband. It's wild. So, once again, the court reached for constitutional morality, struck the law down, and said that any law based on these outdated ideas about women has no place in a modern country. And there's this fantastic quote from Justice D.Y. Chandrachud that just sums it all up perfectly. He said, "It is not the common morality, but rather constitutional morality, which must guide the law." I mean, that's it, right there. It's a clear statement that popular opinion can't be an excuse for an unjust law. And what both of these cases were really pushing for is this concept of substantive equality. This is so important. It's not just about treating everyone the same. It's not like giving everyone a box of the same height to see over a fence. It's about recognizing that some people are starting from way behind, and the law has to actively work to break down the barriers they face so that everyone actually has a real shot at being equal.
Now, this all sounds pretty amazing, right? But as you can probably imagine, giving judges this kind of power, well, it gets controversial. And it raises a really big question about how powerful this tool should be. So when you boil it all down, what's the ultimate role of this doctrine? At its best, constitutional morality is a shield. It protects our rights from social prejudice, it puts limits on government power, it protects minorities from the tyranny of the majority, and it makes sure our laws are based on solid, enduring values, not just whatever's popular this week. And that leaves us with the central debate, the big question at the heart of this whole thing. Is constitutional morality a totally necessary tool for justice, one that lets a constitution breathe and grow with the times? Or is it kind of a blank check, letting judges write their own beliefs into law? It's a debate that gets to the very core of what a constitution is for. And that, I think, is a question worth thinking about.